Hi guys, welcome to a slightly different episode of Tall Tale Taverns. Due to the technical difficulties in our first episode, we would like to come through and retroactively give character descriptions, classes, and a bit about each character that was supposed to be in the first episode that we lost. That way everyone can enjoy and understand the characters as they progress through this story. So I hope you all enjoy.
And we apologize for the technical difficulties. We're slowly figuring it out, but we appreciate your patience and understanding.
Hello, travelers. Hello, fellow barbarians and rangers and wizards and warlocks and all the crazy things in the world. It's me, Ren, known as a little 3'4" hobbit, and as a brave warrior, being in that crazy world of all the crazy times. Let me explain my story to you step by step. Let's get started. Born in the world, you get checked if you're, weak or strong, and depending on that, you might live. Well, guess what? I lived, so we're all good there. Going down the line as a child, being in Baloo, which is just my city, my state of mind, my peace, my war-driven blood, when that kicks in, I scream that to the top of my lungs. But anyways, as a kid, you go through the trials called the Erogi trials, which is a brutal task of becoming the greatest warrior ever in this whole little legionnaire of group of Bantan, Spartan little men that are ready to kill you on sight. But being in that little Rogi crisis and whatnot, it takes a toll on you. Those kids die, and you get sent out to go kill your first beast. And some of those kids don't make it back. But good old Ren here killed his first owl bear when he was, measly 12. But in the end, going down the line, Ren had to face a lot of overcoming things and had to go through war after war until one day the stars started falling out of the sky. Ren took this as a sign of he was a god, coming down to save them or something like that to stop this other war. It turned out to be the other things, demons. Demons started coming out of the sky, killing things and destroying things on both sides of the enemies, werebears and all whatnots that we were fighting at the time. Ren, being the hero, decided to go slay the first beast that he ever saw, and his friend got injured, Max Hellfire, one of his companions. And he got half burnt. As soon as that happened, he had to leave to go fight in the center of the town. After all the commotion and everything else happened, everything died down. And then they decided we need to make something better than just Spartans and little Baloo men, We need more groups to take on more tasks of these falling stars. And so they hired me, Maxwell, my best friend RTM, and also Alexander the Great to go hunt these stars down and take them down and destroy them as best as we can. But as soon as that happens, Ren gets into a sort of a ultimatum and gets framed for murdering one of his lieutenant's sons. And he doesn't know who did it, but he knows it's in the city still, and it's gonna cause more mayhem. Ren gets exiled and gets all of his rights taken away, all of his status or anything else like that as a warrior, and gets kicked out of the wall. Therefore, Ren sets on his journey as Ren the Wanderer, not Ren the son of Baloo. And this is where, he goes through his trials and his phase and goes a little crazy then and there and gets beat up along the way, meeting, his enemies, his foes, and actually coming to peace of mind and saying, these are just human beings just like us. But, being injured and beaten, and injured, he went on his way and went to a temple, meeting a couple of his friends, a couple of his companions that you all know and love.
Hi, I'm Heather. I play Seraphina, who's a dark elf who's 50 years old. She's from Quichal, which is a mining city. My father is in charge of the mining city. He's in charge of the mines. My mom is the advisor for Prince Alistar of Lothwain. I have a brother named Sam and a sister named Aurora. They both work with my parents, but I decided not to do that because I chose the path of being a fighter. I have a friend named Luca who I kind of go through fights with. Sam and Luca and my dad have all kind of encouraged me to kind of do my own thing, even though my dad doesn't know exactly what I do, but he encourages me to do them. Luca brought up this idea of me becoming a big fighter, so we went on this trip to find a new place to go fighting. So Luca and I went out on this trip to find a fight where I could make money, become a big fighter. When we got there, we were stowaways on this captain, his name's Captain Morgan, on his ship, and we jumped off the side of it, kind of causing issues, and we ended up getting arrested. I was able to pay my way out of there, but Luca got arrested, and so I was left with all of his belongings, and I needed to bail him out, but I had no more money. So I followed the path of where he had told me to go for this fight, and instead of finding a fight, I just found a coliseum at the ancient ruins where we ended up finding the rest of the party, and that's where the rest of the story picks up.
Hello! I'm Storm. I play Derelith. He is a 69 year old human. He is a wizard. A long time ago, he was born to Remus, who, as we've seen throughout the story so far, is not a great guy. He's been through quite a bit, got scared because Remus was not a fan of magic, and he moved to a dwarven city. In that dwarven city, he went to college for about a year, learned a little bit of language and a lot of information about just the world. That's why he constantly just says stuff about what's in the world. After Remus's army started moving into the dwarven cities, Derelith got scared yet again, and as he always does, he runs. And so he ran into the ruins. There he learned a little bit about dwarven and elvish culture, got himself familiar with the language there, and started hearing some weird voices coming from far away. From that, he followed the voices into the forest and found that the trees were talking to him. Over a long period of time, he started to understand their language and started to learn more about their culture, and they started teaching him spells and abilities that he had never seen before. Walking further and further into the forest, he found a couple of people who looked a little strange to him, and then he saw a unicorn cross his path. And at first he's like, oh my god, what is that? But then the people that saw him also saw said unicorn, and in their culture that is seen as something that is a sign of power and admiration. So they put him in a seat of respect. He got very close with these peoples. Eventually he married the chief's daughter, and they had a child. It's a lot. So after having said child, Derelith and his wife raised him, and when he came of age and left on his own to do his own thing, Derelith kind of hung out with his wife until she got sick. He carved a mask to honor her memory while she was dying, and then when she died, he put her soul into a tree, as is the custom of the village that he was part of. He still talks to her, but then after a couple years, that kind of starts getting a little stale, so he sets out for new adventures. Finds some trouble in Myanmar, where the goblins brought him on some strange adventures, and eventually he aided in the theft of somebody's child. Naughty. Basically helped him steal a baby. Then they had a religious, I don't even know what to call it, a religious ceremony where all of the goblins feasted on said baby and then turned into some sort of fucked up thing and scared the shit out of Derelith so bad that he left Myanmar forever. Shortly after leaving Myanmar, he finds himself outside of the ruins and bumps into Shadow, who comes with him to meet the rest of the group. And from there, our story kind of started.
Hey everybody, I'm Gage. I play Milawa. He is a 12-year-old human land pirate. I'm playing him as a rogue right now. And essentially, Milawa has a bit of a messed up story. He was born on a pirate ship as the son of the head captain of the ship, sailing the high seas. His homeland was technically Swordbreak Island, though he had never been there before. From there, once his dad passed away due to some unknown illness, he essentially was thrown overboard by the rest of his comrades. And once that happened, he kind of waded in the water for a long time. Not knowing how he survived, was eventually taken in to be eaten by the goblins of Momweir, just as Storm had previously mentioned. And essentially, he was too old to be eaten by the goblins. He was taken in by a bit of a reject in the Momweir goblins. Once they realized he was too old to eat, they kept him around for a little bit. He kind of got to scope the place out and then eventually kicked him off on the path that was most convenient for them. That path happened to be on a little ways out from the Doombasses, the giant race of this world. Milawa wandered for a long time until he eventually ran into them, stayed with them for a long time and learned quite a few things. Quote unquote. From there, he knew he wanted to find great treasure and had heard rumors from Momweir that there was great treasure in the great ancient ruins. So he asked the Doombasses to point him to the great ruins. They pointed, and he just went in that direction. Little did he know it was the complete opposite direction of where he was supposed to go. And after a long ways of traveling, he ended up in Sumsava, the city of thieves and assassins. He lived there for a while where he was taken in by two mentors, Spike and Lee are their names. They are Dragonborns. They taught him the ways of thieving, or as he now calls it, land piracy. So he is a land pirate. From there, he did odd jobs with them, being a child, messed up from time to time, and ended up accruing a vast debt with Spike and Lee. Once he accrued a big enough debt, they kicked him out and said, "Listen, kid, we need you to go make some gold. Go ahead and come back once you have some." They kicked him out and abandoned him, kind of like the same circumstance with the pirate ship. So he made his way back to where he knew, which was the Doombasses. Said that they pointed him in the wrong direction and he wanted to go to the actual ancient ruins. They pointed him there and off he set, kind of bumping into some hardships along the way, meeting his future wife as well. Though she doesn't view it that way yet. And then once he made his way to the Great Ruins, he kind of heard people coming around him and he hid in a pond because he doesn't need to breathe. Technically, he can hold his breath forever, and he hid in a pond. And around that time is where he met the rest of the party. And now, as you have heard and watched, he's gotten himself into even deeper crap than before. Hoping to get the money for Spike and Lee and return to kind of the only semblance of home he's ever really known. So yeah, that's Milawa.
Hi, my name's Andrew, and I play Hal, the human barbarian. Hal is a big, buff, lovable old man. He's 60-something years old. He's like 7'10", and he's fucking shredded. There's a drawing of him. Hal used to be a soldier way back in the day. He and his family, his wife and daughter, were living in the city, being nice and happy, until Ramus came along, and he was leading a siege against the city, where then Hal had to make the decision to either flee with his family or stay and honor his duty. And he made the decision to stay. His wife fled with their child, and Hal lost. And he was thrown into the gulag, where then he found his wife was there as well. But she told him, "Hey, our daughter got out." And they were stuck in the gulag for a long time. I mean, not Hal's wife. She was not built for the gulag. She did not make it. But Hal was guided by pure anger through the fighting pits, and then eventually escaped, traveling the world afterwards, searching for his daughter. And after 20 or so years of searching, called it. He settled down in a little town where that's where he resided until he got picked back up by adventure and a weird spiritual lion.
Hello, I'm Steven. I play as Shado, and speaking of, he comes from a very troubled backstory. He actually started down in the 7th circle of hell with his parents, his mom being somewhat human and his dad being a demon, which made me. throughout the years of me being down there, it always kind of seemed that I was by myself. I was never really looked after too much. So I kind of just learned to go on my own. Throughout the years, we did have this being, his name was Hendrix Duram, who would come into the house, you know, my one sanctuary, my one safe place, and he would come and cause chaos throughout my family. He was always hassling my mom as if he wanted something from her. Obviously, no one wanted to give up and just let him have it, but there was one day that I thought that I could do something about it, and so I waited on the stairs knowing that he was coming in. As he came in, I jumped on his back, thinking I could overpower him. The next thing I knew, I was on the ground with one of my horns in his hand. And that after that day, I kind of learned that I did need to watch over myself a little more, but in the tiefling world, losing a horn kind of means embarrassment and weak. So I again had to prove myself and I had to get out of there. In the 7th circle of hell, there is a maze that can either lead to the 6th circle or the 8th. I thought I had learned the map well enough to where I could start my leave up to the above ground, and I accidentally ended up in the 8th circle, which is a very cold and lonely place because there aren't many others there. Me being a tiefling, the cold was also not very good for me. So as I was suffering and my parents unable to find me, they decided to come up with a good deal with Hendrix to let me either come back and, throughout even more discussion, go above ground with my father. Unfortunately, my mother had to stay in the 7th circle with Hendrix, but that is how I got out. After that, kind of just dealing with the normal childhood, like having friends of kind of the same types of people. I made friends very quickly as I had already been independent. I knew how to take care of myself. I had many followers, which led into college and being in a frat from the House of Phoenix with the headmaster Byleth, who later came to watch over me. With my dad also being the dean of the school, it did make it kind of rough on me to always have to succeed, which, because of that, I actually took action to try not to succeed. I didn't really care about it. My dad was the dean, so I kind of felt that I had a pass. All up until one of the last days, actually the day before we find out if we graduate or not, I had a night to remember, or not remember, so Shado. As far as we have learned is that Chad and Shado were hanging out, and Shado decided to make some cool mixed drinks for Chad, which inevitably resulted in Chad's death, or explosion. Shado waking up with Chad's hand, only knowing by the ring that was on Chad's finger from the prior night. He decided to tell Selperk to go and hide the body because Shado was trying to graduate. He thought that if he had done good this one day, out of, you know, all the bad days of the year, he would make it out. Going to the school opening of the assembly, of getting these tickets to know if you graduate or not. Shado unfortunately did not get a ticket, and was later told that he was getting kicked out and kind of pushed on his own. Finding it weird that he was supposed to be independent, Shado had his mentor Byleth kind of watch over him to make sure that he was being protected and going on the right path. Shado decided he was gonna ignore that and just kind of have him trail along. Shado went on his many nights of benders until he finally woke up one day and asked Byleth if there was anything that he thought that Shado should do, which he did. And unfortunately, Byleth led him to a cave. And immediately Byleth disappeared as Shado walked into this cave of horrifying night. He ended up going through certain paths with another boulder walking behind him, so he was locked in, walking up to a giant spider who told him to go into the ruins and find her chest that she needed. With that, he thought that was the best option, trying to make sure Byleth stayed alive as well. And that is where we walk into the ruins. Shado finds his own tavern to claim, and then Derelith walked in.